Waxahachie Chamber and members and audience. Welcome to our first mental health and recovery series. We have with us today a very special chamber member, Discovery Point Retreat, and they are specifically invested in supporting and providing value to the community in the area of mental health and recovery. So if you would listen real quick, I'm going to introduce you to Noelle and Felicia, our wonderful reps from Discovery Point. If y'all would just share a little bit about your mission, why we're here and doing this series, and then we can introduce our special guest here that we haven't introduced yet.
Yes. So I'm Noelle Carmen. I'm with Discovery Point Retreat, and we are really wanting to reach out to the community. We are a substance use disorder and mental health facility, and with us is Felicia DeJean. Am I saying that right, Felicia?
That's fine.
Good enough. It's good enough.
Good enough.
So Felicia, can you tell us a little bit about your involvement with Discovery Point Retreat and kind of what you're hoping to accomplish with the community?
Sure. So I am the Executive Vice President of Clinical Operations at Discovery Point Retreat. I know it's a long one of those titles, but with that title comes primarily compliance. So I deal with medical and nursing to ensure that we are abiding by our state regulations, making sure that our Joint Commission accreditation stays on our walls, and that's a really big deal for most hospitals or behavioral health services to have a Joint Commission accreditation, and we have them across all of our facilities. And so that is my primary responsibility, to ensure the safety of our staff and clients, and that we're abiding by all of the fun rules that we're given to by all of our awesome regulatory agencies.
Yes.
So those are my primary responsibilities right now. But with what we're trying to do with the community, we've seen, and I know, Noelle, you've spoken to this a lot, a lot of people don't even know within our community that we even exist, that we're here to provide these services. So
with that being said, that's one of the reasons we're here, is we want the community to know there are substance use, mental health options, outpatient services right here in Waxahachie, right here in Ennis. So if you are struggling with addiction, if you're struggling with mental health issues, we are here to serve you. I also wanted to introduce our special guest in terms of reaching out to the community, Billy Wallace. Thank you so much for being here. A true local hero, a true local servant, 3 decades as a police officer. Thank you so much for being here. We really want to find out about you and connect with this community.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
The first thing I'd like to talk about is your passion. You are heading up a task force of your own in terms of getting emergency goods, vital goods to the community. But before we dive into that, just want to hear some background from you in terms of your history and in terms of why you have such a passion for this community. You've been here for a long time.
I have my whole life. I've been here, and I love this community. I love the people here. I've served in this community my entire life, and I'll continue to do that. I retired in early March of 2016 after serving 3 decades in law enforcement with the Waxahachie Police Department. And, service that's what I know, that's what I do. I'm always looking for opportunities to serve in additional roles. And that's why I started this group on social media, to reach out and find people who are struggling with different needs and see how we can serve them.
And I love your life story, because we had a conversation before we got on here, and to hear about your story in terms of you did grow up with addiction all around you. I'm just so curious to know about how that affected where you ended up today in terms of your inner spirit, your inner passion, how you serve the community.
I did grow up with two alcoholic parents. There was domestic, disturbances in my home, and my parents would go out on the weekends, drink too much alcohol, come back to the house, and would get in verbal and physical fights. And because of everything going on in my home is what caused me to find my way and start working when I was 13 years old. And I was the steady income in the home at 14 and 15.
So you were taking care of your family, essentially. You were taking care of them financially, but also in a sense emotionally taking care of everybody. So you are already providing safety for others at a very young age. Do you think that part of that was you trying to provide safety for yourself as well?
Yeah, and some calm, stability. Yeah. That's what I wanted. And so, helping my parents out, maybe, my thinking at such a young age is that if I took some stress off of them and helped them, buy groceries and, pay a bill or two, just maybe, they wouldn't feel so stressed, and just maybe they wouldn't, go out and get drunk.
Taking care of everybody.
Yeah. So, it's hard to say exactly, because I was so young, but, I wanted stability and I wanted peace.
So Felicia, this would be a really good time to pull you into the conversation, because oftentimes with youth and children in families that have addiction, a lot of times you have a child who is the protector, who does try to make everybody safe. Can you speak to that a little bit from the addiction side?
Definitely. I mean, we see that all the time. There's more times than not, there's a lot of, mothers and fathers that come into our facilities that, that are trying to regain those relationships with their children and trying to build that life again. It's not easy to have addiction in a household with children. The effects that it has, they're long term. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, and at times, that can turn into addiction itself. The trauma of that, can perpetuate itself throughout their life and, turn into addiction or, and addictions of all sorts, sex addiction, gambling, alcohol and drug abuse. And there's also hope, right? I mean, I think that's the important message to put out there. We see that so much, all these families just torn apart. But we do want to, especially for whoever's listening, know that, hey, there are options out there, and we do provide those services within the facility. We, in our outpatient, we just started parental classes for in the evening for our clients. So we're doing things within our facility to rebuild those relationships. We have to, because I mean, that is really sometimes the driving force to what brings people into treatment. But ultimately it's the work that has to be put into it that really matters. And those things are what rebuilds families, the work that we do within ourselves.
And I would say, Billy, you are the embodiment of this hope, because even now, as people begin to hear your story, to see the strength that you have, that you've made it through. Look at you, this leader. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like going from the kind of childhood you described to, well, now you're a police officer. There was a story you shared with me where you were working in the grocery store, and I don't want to give it away. I don't want to tell it, but can you speak to that story that we discussed earlier?
Yeah, I, was asked, how I got into law enforcement. Did I have family in law enforcement, or what prompted me to, take that career path? And the only thing that I could say to that was that, while working in a grocery store and, seeing shoplifters come in and knowing, that wasn't right. And, I took interest in, watching them and, trying to stop the thefts.
And this is you even as a teenager.
Mm-hmm. And in doing that, I met several of the police officers on the force because, once I did catch somebody stealing, I would detain them and call the local police department. And, they would show up, and whether they, wrote them a ticket or took them to jail, I had several of them tell me, Billy, you really need to think about becoming a police officer. This is your calling. And when they first started telling me that, I was like, no, I don't think so. Because I didn't know any police officers. I didn't have any family in law enforcement, and honestly, before the interaction, I was intimidated by police. And so the store closed down in 1986. And when the store closed down, I was just like, okay, what do I do now? And I thought, well, they said I would be a good police officer. So
maybe I should try that.
Yeah, so sign me up.
So I would love to know your very first day as a police officer. There you are. I can't imagine the pride and maybe the fear all wrapped up in one as you experience that first day, like, oh my God, I'm here. I've done it.
Yeah, it's been a minute or two ago, but just, it's not easy, to take on something like that. And especially when you don't have a mentor. But I mean, just thinking back, and realizing, gosh, I did this, I accomplished this, everything I went through to get here, and I've done it. I did it.
I can't imagine like your sense of self evolving, to hear where you were as a child, then people seeing this different side of you, and then there you are having accomplished it. That's a whole evolution. Did you ever have the need to go back and like emotionally address some of the things that happened in your childhood? Was there ever a time where you kind of had to reconcile some of those things within yourself?
I did, and I was already a police officer at that time. But, when I was 24, I started having some problems myself. And, I was working a lot of hours, and I had, things, in my background and in my childhood that I needed to deal with. I needed to address some people that had hurt me. I needed to, go back and revisit some of that pain. And so I did that.
And to your point, you're seen as such a role model, such an embodiment of strength. I think that it probably is helpful for people to hear you say some of these things that make you very relatable. I'm sure people come and tell you, you're such a role model. I can't believe how strong, you are. Is there ever a time within yourself where you question that or think, I need a break? I can't always be the strong one.
I do have people tell me that a lot. I have for many years. And, while I appreciate that, I just want to tell people that, looking at me and the things that I've done in my life hasn't always come easy. And I've found myself, in some situations where I struggled myself. And you really do, have to pull your bootstraps up and keep going.
Yep.
Not give up and give in. It's so easy to give up and give in. And I say, if you're listening right now and you're in that position, I say to you, don't give up and give in.
So Felicia, can you speak to kind of the hope part of things? You mentioned hope earlier, but it's so easy, especially right now in the times that we're living, to lose hope, to feel isolated, to feel like there are no options. Can you speak to that some in terms of messaging to people to offer that?
Yeah, I mean, hope is a funny thing, right? I mean, you have to be in a place of somewhat of despair to ultimately, need to have hope, right? It comes from a place of pain and fear and discomfort, and those things are okay. Like, in order for you to feel like you can move forward and make decisions like, I want to get the help that I need, I'm going to call this 1-800 number and get the help that I finally deserve. That right there, that's hope. Sometimes we want, when we want it, as quickly as we want it, and we want things to happen right now, and these things to just be lifted. But just like Billy said, life is hard, and you have to work for it, and you have to work for your recovery too. And that's recovery from addiction, and alcoholism, but also from depression and anxiety. And in this time where everything is really scary and really uncertain, a lot of those things are coming to the forefront, and a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. A lot of people are scared of mental health that they may have never had to deal with until they were stuck at home for weeks and months at a time with their entire family. And now, that's why we're doing this, right? It's, we're connecting this with the community, and we're making sure everybody knows that we're here, but we're also saying everybody's in a tough spot. It's okay to ask for help. There is hope.
And speaking of hope, Billy, talk to us about what it is you've been doing. You have a Facebook page, you have a whole outreach that you, of course, have spearheaded to help others. Tell us about what you're seeing and the needs that are being met.
I'd love to. I just over a week ago, I started a social media group called Waxahachie Have It or Need It. And the reason I started this group was because I wanted to give people a place to go if they had something that they'd be willing to give up for free, and two, if they needed something. And this group has just been phenomenal as far as the people that have joined right now. And like I said, we're just over a week into it, just over, I think the last time I looked was between 850, 875 members so far. And
wow,
I just started it a little over a week ago, but the people that have come together and come alongside a stranger. We're not talking about people that they know, and the friendships already that I've made, from this group is just phenomenal. And I can't believe that so many people are willing to help a complete stranger. That's what's been so great about this group. And I'm not talking about one time that they've been willing to help, whether it be through donations, either food or, masks or other things, but also they've come back time and time again. Like, earlier I looked out and there's groceries on my porch again that will be going to the Salvation Army here when this meeting's over.
So you talked about a family that you were wanting to donate things to. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I don't want to violate anyone's privacy, but at least tell us in general what you guys are doing, what you guys are seeing in that regard.
Okay. I noticed, from the donations coming in, that once everything had been fulfilled, the requests that came in, that, monetary donations and food was still coming in. So I thought, okay, we'll look and try to, adopt a couple of families and we'll help them, whatever their needs are. So I solicited on the group, if you know of somebody, if your family's in need, please reach out, and we'd love to partner with you and help you. And so 2 families were adopted, and I met with the first family yesterday, and they received their donation. And, I handed it to a gentleman, and he drove away crying. Literally crying. And so, what the people in this group are doing for this community is great. It really is.
One of the things that I think is so important to talk about is stigma, because stigma wraps itself around poverty, it wraps itself around addiction, and makes it so hard for people to reach out because there's shame involved. And so, Felicia, I was curious about maybe some comments you had on that in terms of people being able to reach out for that kind of help and not feel the stigma or not be concerned. How do you speak to that?
Well, I mean, I probably use one of my favorite authors of all time, Brene Brown, as an example here, and say, you know, this, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable, and vulnerability and courage go hand in hand. And you know, to remove that stigma, everybody has to allow themselves to open up their hearts and say it's okay to be vulnerable, and it's okay to say, I'm not okay, I need to be lifted up right now. There's a lot of shame around that, and there's a lot of shame around needing help, and that's financially and supporting, you know, a family, and in a time like this, it's so tumultuous. But, you know, and also with addiction and with mental health, it's all stigmatized still. I mean, even with all of the information that's out there, knowing that these things are a disease, you know, that, you know, these are chemical imbalances in people's brains, there's still, you know, a lack of understanding out there for that. And knowing that there is a solution, there are solutions for people and ways to get help. You know, first, you know, we all have to be willing to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to be vulnerable, and also be willing to say things like, I'm here to help, you know, and vice versa. I need the help. I'm willing to help. We're all in it together. I think that's one thing that's coming out of this whole COVID-19 craziness, is that everyone's realizing how important connection is, and how connection. Yes. So.
And that's the whole reason we're here. That is exactly what you're doing, Billy, is creating that connection. And I think, again, to Felicia's point, your willingness to be vulnerable, even, you know, in this interview, to come and tell us your story, I just think is such a powerful thing, especially as a leader in the community. Last words and messages to anyone who is having a hard time being vulnerable. What would you say to them?
I would just say that, you know, as you look around and you see people that maybe have more than you have, or, you know, are more successful than you feel like you've been, that, you know, it's not always the way the picture looks. And, you know, there's things, there's layers sometimes that nobody knows about. And, you know, no matter what situation you're facing, no matter what's going on in your home life, you know, one, there is help. And two, you know, don't be ashamed to ask for help, because if you ask for help, then there's hope. And with hope, there's success.
I love it. Absolutely powerful, powerful words. So again, we are from Discovery Point Retreat. We offer substance use disorder services. We offer mental health services. Please reach out. We so appreciate you, Billy, giving your time and your story here.
Thank you.
You're an icon.
Thank you
Really
so much.
Very much. Thanks
you.
for having me.
Yes, thank you, Felicia. And Heidi, thank you for the chamber hosting us and being here, even with all the technical difficulties we've had. You should have seen us. It was quite a show before the show.
You're
and
muted.
We can't hear her.
You're muted.
That's a fact.
I hope y'all can read lips.
Figured out. There's some really talented lip readers, I bet, who could have read what I just said, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Y'all, thank you so much for being here every Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Our mental health and recovery series, drawing awareness to this very, very important issue right now, especially with everyone in quarantine. Reach out to your neighbors. Check on those people that you haven't talked to in a long time, because you never know what someone is secretly facing right now. And we're so grateful for Discovery Point being here to help serve the community in that way, and for Billy sharing her story. If you guys have a 1-800 hotline to drop drop, could you let everybody know right now what that hotline is for people who need help with this?
We're going to post all our contact information. It will be posted with this at the top. So
Marvelous.
you will have,
It'll be at the top.
yes, at the top.
We love you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank